Great. Go live. Hello, everybody. What's going on with my notes there? Yeah, cool notes. I don't know if anybody's here right now, but yeah, this is a test stream, and most likely most people who might see this stream are going to see it on the replay, and that is by design. I've been wanting to do these kinds of things for a long time for the communities, which is, you know, to get inside some of the ideas that drive the way that I do things, specifically because I go about things in a pretty simple way. And I think it might be helpful to other people who are attempting to do production and all that kind of stuff themselves. Because, yeah, I don't do very much and I don't do anything too special, and you can do it too. And that's really the whole point of the whole thing. You don't have to do it the way that I do it, but maybe there will be things that we cover that will be helpful in your own projects. Anyways, so that's the thing. I don't know if it's working in terms of the audio and all that. I would love to get some insight there. Tells me on the meter that the audio is good and all of that. So yeah. Oh shoot, Aiden, how are you? Really good to see you in there. Very stoked. Yeah, so I hope to do these kinds of things a lot more, especially on the back end for the communities. It's a little bit more intimate and a little bit maybe it's a little bit easier for me to present because I don't feel as much pressure to focus on production, and I can focus just on the content. And I don't have to worry about views and it hurting my channel and that kind of stuff, because I've discovered in the last little while that these things all have an effect. So if it's private or unlisted and it's just for the communities, it's going to be fine. Anyway, so it sounds good. Thanks, Aiden. Awesome. That's good. So in preparing for this, I've been trying to do this for quite a few weeks now. And the more that I approached it, the more I realized that it requires a lot more preparation than I initially anticipated. I thought it would be a lot more casual. And it may come across very casual, but I've tried to prepare as much as possible just so it's not, you know, just random conversation and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to launch right into it here. This is a test, so some things might not work. If people keep watching, then let me know when things are not working. But I don't expect people to watch all the way through, just because it's a limited audience and people have their lives. This was a surprise stream, all that sort of stuff. So we're going to go to our notes, and I'm going to bring my notes up here. There's going to be a lot of clicking around production notes. Great. Oh, wrong one. Wetlands production. Bam. So the Wetlands Floral production breakdown I don't know, I might miss some things. You can, if you're following along, you can ask questions. Happy to get into any kind of conversation about what's going on with this stuff. But we're going to be taking a look at the Wetlands Floral EP, a few examples within that production. We're going to be looking at the mix, not the mastering, and we're going to talk about some of the production stuff for the recording part of it as well. And it's going to be more of an overview. It's not going to be a deep dive, but it's going to be a lot deeper than anything that I've ever done before. Because I hope that some of these things are going to be, you know, helpful for your own projects, or insightful or inspiring or something. It's just some kind of value for you. It's not about me at all. Anyway, so the very first thing for this Wetlands Floral thing, for anything that you're doing, something I always start with is art direction. And the art direction for this project, I would say the art direction for all projects is kind of similar. I'm going to just kind of touch on the general ones. I don't need to talk about the artistic writing part of it today, but more the art direction of the sonics and the production aspects. This is nothing to do with the playing or the riffs themselves. Who cares about that? We all have our own riffs and we know what that's about. But the art direction for the sonics and the audio is I tend to go for a realistic sound. So I think about that before I even start recording anything. And I think about that in the playing and how I will approach the playing, all that kind of stuff. I want it to sound kind of realistic. I'm still going for a produced sound, but I want it to sound a lot more realistic. A big motivation for that is the whole computer metal thing. You know, the computer metal sound is a big thing. There is a lot of music coming out these past few years that is incredibly fake sounding. And I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. Some of that music I think is awesome. I just don't want to make it. There's an unbelievable amount of it being made. And most of it is in the production aspect of it, in the editing and these sorts of things. And that's cool. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that's not what I'm reaching for. And I think there are a lot of people who don't want to do that. I have no interest in making computer music. If I did, I'd make electronic music. But I'm, like I say, full disclaimer, I have zero against computer metal. There's a bunch of it I listen to. So that being said, going for a realistic sound that sounds like a band as much as I can. I think I can take it a lot further going into the production, like doing the productions that I've been doing the last little while. I'll get into that stuff later. But I want Wetlands to be kind of dirty, but still articulate and bright. A lot of sludge, doom, whatever you want to call that kind of stuff is, you know, hard to hear any articulation in, hard to hear what's going on. There are records where I can't even hear the chord changes. It's just this wall of mud, which is cool. So once again, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just specifying my intentions and I'm trying to give some comparisons. So I know that I want it to be dirty, like sludge and doom, but yeah, articulate and bright. And then, yeah, to separate myself out from all the stereotypical sludge kind of stuff, but also to separate myself out from all of the computer metal stuff. And yeah, attempt to have my own sound and remain kind of realistic, lifelike. The recording goal is, you know, I want it to be sort of on time and in tune, but not overworked. And this feeds back into the whole sounding like a band thing. So in the recording process, I went for longer takes with a swagger and that sort of heavy, but not metal. A lot of the stuff that sounds really metal these days is really overproduced or just like heavily produced, we'll say. And I'm trying to not do that. So let's take a look at some examples of that. And I got to get my sweatshirt. Oh, my face is, I'm not on the camera here. I didn't really set that up very well, did I? That's okay. So we're going to go, I think we're going to go to the HELIX first. We're going to talk about the sounds and whatnot. And yeah, we're going to start here. So sounds. Just give me a second here. So all productions start with, you know, the emphasis is the riffs. Also, I don't know if you can hear the television. You probably can, but Carrie is watching TV. It's pretty loud. It's probably bleeding into the mic, which is fine. I hope it's not too distracting. But all productions start with the material itself. So something to keep in mind is the writing and the performance is a huge part of any production. And we're going to get into some of that stuff. But it starts with the playing, and we'll talk about the playing with examples of the sound files. But the instruments that we used was the SRC6 to record all the guitars. To play live, I probably wouldn't use this guitar because it's, it doesn't have the swagger or the vibe that I'm looking for. But it's a great sounding and great playing instrument. It just doesn't have the vibe, the look. So we got the Helix going here. Let's see. I didn't have time to tune this, which is crazy. Bam. And is that up? Yes, that is up. We got our Arma track. Bam. And bam. And let's move this over here. Okay. So we're going to talk about how the tracks are set up and all that stuff in a minute, but I just want to go over sounds. Oh yeah, you can't see everything that I do on screen because of the way it's all set up. Great. This is probably going to be in one speaker, maybe not. Not sure how. Let me know if you can. But the sounds, all of the sounds that I used, I didn't tweak anything or nothing like that. I just used my Wetlands presets that I made for Wetlands, which is why I use them. But it's a few different guitar sounds. So this distortion tone. It's not in tune. But the distorted tone, this is prominent on Decorated, and it's in a few tunes, but Decorated, it's the whole tune. And then the fuzz tone, which is on most of the tunes. So the fuzz tone, it's kind of an HM2, overblown HM2 kind of sound. And the Boss fuzz is really just an overblown HM2 circuit. So that's what that is. And then the mid. Yeah, nice tuning on there. But a mid-gain tone and a verb tone. I don't know what's going on with this tuning. Great. But that's it. There's only 4 tones on this entire record, or entire EP. Do I have enough headphone here? 4 guitar tones and great, 1 bass tone. I have 2 bass tones in my Helix pack, but I only used 1 on this EP. Anyway, so there you go. Those are all the tones, and the bass that I use is this bass. It is a Ibanez ATK 800. The bass is an active bass, and I used it in active mode, and it has the ATK triple humbucker thing, but I used the coils closest to the bridge. For the SRC6, I used it in passive mode. It has the EMG soap bars, but it is fully passive. Did not use the active preamp whatsoever. And also bridge pickup. And yeah, that's very common for most music that I will do. So we are done with the sort of tones. Nothing too complicated. You know, some people put a lot of emphasis on a lot of different tones and a lot of different sounds for every song and all these sorts of things, which is cool. This is more of an example of, you know, the Wetlands EP turned out pretty good and there's very few sounds on it. So I just figured that was a interesting little bit to contemplate. And going back to our notes, the sounds, let me just get this up. Oh yeah, I gotta stay in the field here. Band list, Wetlands, production, breakdown, pilot stream. Here we go. Bam. So sounds. Oh yeah, and the drums, we can go to the actual thing. We can take a look at what's going on with the drums. And let's go to desktop. Great. And Reaper and drums. Let's move this over. So there are two kits here that you can see. One of them is drums to tracks. And something I have to say about drums, like all of these tracks here, this track all the way to this track, are the sampler, the Easy Drummer sampler. I don't know, is that coming up? I got to double check that. It's not coming up. Let's go desktop, and let's do this. And scene 2, no, cancel. I'm going to just quickly see if I can add Easy Drummer so that we can see it. Window capture, great, okay, and bam, and oh shoot, I think we can see it. Okay, great. Oh, look at that. Wow. Okay. This is incredible. I can even move it around. Wow. OBS coming through. So this is the main kit here. And I'm going to move this over here. For me, it's interesting because the views are all different depending on where you're viewing from. But on this here channel, this is the Easy Drummer sort of master channel where the sampler lives, and it's feeding into all these tracks right here. So I always do this. It doesn't matter if it's a demo or not. A lot of people are very resistant to this process. I understand why it seems like it's more complicated. I would argue that it's simpler because with this, you know, we got our drum kit. I'm using the DFH kit as the main kit. It's my favorite kit. I use it for almost everything, and I just treat the drums differently for each project, but I like the way it hits. It hits the way that I hit. If I played drums, it would kind of sound like this. But nothing special. It's Easy Drummer 2, and we are using the DFH kit. The mixer in Easy Drummer is flat. The ambience, let's take a look at what's going on here. Flat meaning all the faders in the mixer are just 0. Some of them are off. The ambience is turned off. I don't like the ambience on this kit. The one shot, the shaker, the tambourine, and the percussion amp, whatever. Those things are all off. The bleed on the overheads is high. The bleed on the snare is minimal. So that's kind of what's going on with drums. And as you can see, most of these drums are turned off. Quite a few of the cymbals are on, but just, it's a 4-piece kit. Kick. Done. Great. So that's what's going on there. I'm going to just go over here to OBS and window capture. Look at that. Wow, this is so wild. So Easy Drummer is feeding into these tracks. we can very quickly, I should probably very, very quickly save, open new project tab. I'm using Reaper, by the way. A lot of people, I think, already know that. But if you don't know that, I'm using Reaper. And file. So to make a multi-output drum track, you just go to track, insert new like virtual instrument on new track. And we're going to go, not Superior Drummer, Easy Drummer, 32 tracks out. Bam. Great. It's going to create all this tracks, all this stuff. Bam. And, is it showing us on? I just got to double check OBS. Yes, it is. Great. Okay. Wonderful. So I get all these tracks, and some of these tracks I don't need, you know. And then in the sampler, can I show the sampler? There's a lot of technicalities here. No, it won't show that one. I need to show another one. Let's show. Let's see. Bam. Easy Drummer. Great. Bear with me. I anticipated that we would, you know, run into some of these difficulties. I've never done this kind of a stream before. Great. That's the right one. So the Easy Drummer kit, let's go drum kit from How Progressive. Do I have some user presets here. User presets, Easy DFH, Metal Machine. Yeah. So this is my DFH preset, and mixer, everything is already flat in my preset. Maybe that wasn't the best to show, because typically, let's do this. Let's go Dark Matter, Big Rock Drums, Basic Camco. Great. And let's go back to drum kit from How Basic. So when you typically load a kit, a stock kit, you know, the mix is already set and there's all these things. There's reverb and whatever. I always get rid of these things. I have a preset, and if you get my downloads, this is not a sales pitch or whatever, but I'm just thinking, like, I'm pretty sure the presets and all that stuff, all the MIDI and the sessions that I sell, the preset, the actual Easy Drummer preset is in there. So if anybody's wondering about that, user preset, bam. So my preset automatically flattens it and all that kind of stuff, and it sets the outputs, right? So if we go back to a basic kit here, drum kit from Hell Basic. Oh, it's already set because I set it. But anyway, the outputs need to match. You know, the outputs kick, all these here, these here outputs, they're already set to go to the right channel. So, yeah, I don't want to get too much in. It's not about that kind of stuff today. For those of you who don't understand what's going on, I want to give a little bit of insight as to what's going on. So I'm going to get rid of that. Cancel. No, we're not going to save that. So we're back with the how do I, bam, we'll make those kind of big, and bam, and let's go make these pretty long. That should be good. Okay, and bam. Great. Maybe that's too. Yeah, that's probably a good view. I don't know. Let me know if you can see these things well enough. Okay, what tune are we on right now? This should be decorated. This is Bouquet. Great. Yeah, I guess we'll just do Bouquet. Great. Also, if you're wondering, it's like Command M can toggle the mixer on and off. So bam, I use that a lot because when I'm tracking, I don't want the mixer in the way generally. And when I'm mixing and doing production stuff, I need the mixer and plugins and all that stuff. So I don't know how this is going so far, but I'm just going to check this. Great. Oh, of course, it's still showing that window. Great. So drums. This is the main kit, the Easy Drummer kit. And I got to go back to OBS and do some magic there. Note to self, I'm going to have to set these presets up for next time that I do it to be proper. But anyway, so the Easy Drummer DFH kit, and it's all set up as the main kit. And then bam, drums, and bam. I need to go back to Easy Drummer or an OBS. Wow, this is starting to get confusing. And this is the backup, not the backup kit, the reinforcing kit. There's a reinforcing kit here. Bam, 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 bam. Prog. Here we go. So the reinforcing kit is, oh, here we go. And bam. Reinforcing kit. There it is. And the reinforcing kit is also a minimal kit. And it's very low. And if we just solo that, bam, there's not much going on. It's just to fatten things up. So, and that's only going to a single stereo track return. It's not split out into tracks because it's in effect. It's not actually, the track could exist without it. And if we play the whole kit itself, that's without it. That's without the reinforcing kit. It just gives the drums a little bit more of that, I don't know, girth without a pile of bottom end. The last thing that I want is a whole bunch of sub bass or a whole bunch of bottom end. So there's two kits. If you ever see this in my sessions, there's a main kit that's set out to tracks, and then there's a reinforcing kit, usually of some kind. And the reinforcing kit, which is this channel right here, is just to give the drums some vibe, to make them earthier, to, you know, they usually have some kind of an EQ. The EQ on the reinforcing kit is extreme, and there's a convolution amp, like an amp modeler on it to make it gnarly sounding. Just because a lot of these digital drums are really clinical. Let's see here. Bam. OBS, what do we got? Oh yeah, our you probably, can you see when I just want to take a look here. If I open plugins, can you see them? You cannot. Right, I got to think about that in the next one. How am I going to do that? Everything has another. Anyway, okay, this is a technical difficulty that I'm going to have to solve going forward with new. Oh, cancel. No. Solve. Whatever. I won't be able to show every plugin at the moment, the way that I have things configured. And I'll try and explain as best as possible. It doesn't really matter what the plugin settings are. That's not what this episode is about. Surprisingly, you would think, oh, production, plugins. We want to talk about all the plugins. So I'm going to go back to my notes here. Bam. Notes. And I'm going to try and stay in the frame. Not like it really matters that much. So the approach. The approach. So I like to work like I'm working on a tape machine. I come from tape. And I really like that process. What I don't like going from session to session to session for song to song to song. There's a whole bunch of reasons I don't like that process. So I work on it like you'd work on a tape machine, excuse me. And, you know, I put all of my tunes in one session on one timeline. And I've been doing that for a really long time. I tried the session to session to session thing. Not a fan. Not saying it's wrong. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. But I like just working in one session and trying to keep it as much like tape, as much like the old days as possible. It sounds a little bit more like a band. That's one of the reasons why. And all of the tunes are in that timeline. So people are like, well, what if I have a bunch of different sounds? And with that, let's go back to the session. And yeah, I don't know if I set up a good view there for the mic, or not the mic, the camera. OBS, bam, 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 desktop. Yeah, let's go to the actual session. So I'm going to go to Reaper and I'm going to get rid of the mixer here. And so what if, you know, in one song here, let's make this a lot smaller. Bam. What if in one song you have different guitar sounds than another? For me, I just make more tracks. And I'll put every time there is a new sound, the new sound is on a new track. And something else that I don't really do, I don't do automation. The most I'll do in terms of automation, you can see here, this is a, you know, these tracks are lower volume than these tracks. And that would be the closest thing to automation you'll ever find in a Bunn production. I do not do automation. If you like to do automation, great. I never do it, and I never will. And there's a whole bunch of reasons, but what is this? The master, right? But yeah, I don't do automation. So, but if there's a new sound goes on a new track. And let's say I have a sound that is similar to an existing sound. Let's say, you know, the end part of this needs to be louder. I won't automate it. I'll put it on a new track. I'll put it on a new set of tracks, and the gain will be a little bit louder on those new tracks. And yeah, no automation. Doesn't matter if there's different things from song to song. It all happens on one timeline. And let's zoom out here, and you can see what that looks like. So Think Tank, you know, Bouquet, Decorated, Wetlands, and Imperial. And Reaper is cool because these cues here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the markers, correspond to the keyboard. So 1 is 1 and 2 is 2, etc. So you can kind of like jump your cursor around really, really quickly that way, which is kind of nice. I'm sure there are other DAWs that do that. I just haven't used a lot of different DAWs in the last couple of years because, I don't know, I'm like, Reaper's good enough. I don't even try anything else anymore. But there's a lot of good DAWs. There's no shortage of good DAWs. So just in case there's any confusion with this session, some of these tracks are doubled. Like, you know, Think Tank, this version here is the original demo version. This version here is the final production version. And you'll see that for Bouquet as well. This is the final production version. Decorated, this is the final production version. Wetlands, which became the tune Foreigns. I had to redo it completely. I didn't have the demo version in this tuning, which is E standard, E1 standard. The bass and the guitar are in the same octave because it's a bass 6. I didn't cover that part. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I hope that kind of gives some insight into different ways that you can think about using setting up your session and working. There are a bunch of benefits. Some of the benefits I can think of off the top of my head would be, better check OBS here. Just make sure that, I'm on the camera. Damn it, desktop. Apologies. I only have one screen here. I'm going to get another screen. I bought another screen about 2 weeks ago. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, my next live stream, I'm going to have 2 screens. I bought the screen. It was broken out of the box, like totally glitching. Great. Anyway, I'm back to one screen. I never got to use 2 screens, actually. Anyway, so I'll try and recap that real quick. But one timeline, and some of these have, you know, the full production version and the demo version. This is the demo version. This is the full production version. And every tune is on the same timeline for the whole EP. And you can just change the if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the cursor, the playhead will follow to each marker, each corresponding marker. And yeah, everything's on the same timeline. So I hope, I'm not going to go all the way back through that. Like I say, this is sort of a pilot, so hopefully live and learn. But I would like to talk about another part of the process here. What would be a good example? We'll look at decorated. So decorated, it's pretty much the same guitar tone all the way through. Great. So we have the main gain guitars here. And if we go to, oh, it changed again. What is happening? Oh, I know why. Desktop, notes. It's the number locations. I can't use the note because the number locations exist inside of OBS. If I use the numbers, it will change the scenes. And it doesn't, you know, the computer doesn't know that 2 different things are using the number keys. Apologies. Just learned something. Okay. Damn. I'm sorry there. But I don't know. We'll go to the comments and we'll talk about it. I hope there's no confusion. I'm sure there is. But so let's see. Yeah, it's working. Great. Okay, it's working. Wonderful. So this track has the same guitars. You know, there is no fuzz tone, or there is no, whatchamacallit, no, yeah, there is no fuzz tone. On, you know, the earlier version here, it was kind of the same, and I didn't really manage the track on the demo version very well. But if we go to Bouquet, right? Bouquet, you can see like the fuzz tones are all in this track. So these are just extra beef tracks, like for atmosphere behind the main guitar. And then this is a mid-gain kind of tone. No, this is like the gain tone. This is the rat. And then this here is delay. And once again, this here over here is beef. So you can split your tracks up. I've noticed that there's quite a few folks who are newer to it and they think that it all has to be on the same track. Split it up. It'll be beneficial to you in a whole bunch of ways. I want to get into what's a good example of it. Maybe Think Tank. Yeah, Think Tank is a pretty good example. Maybe not. Right. So I want to talk about the takes, the longer takes and all that kind of stuff. The thing about Wetlands is it's pretty simple, so it's pretty easy to do long takes anyways. But just for the sake of comparison here, so, you know, this here is the demo version, and this here is the final production version of Think Tank. Here they are side by side. Let me check OBS and make sure that that's working. It's working. Great. So one thing that you will see is all the tracks in the demo version are a lot more chopped up. I did a lot more smaller parts, and I chopped the whole production up a lot more. You can see, like, you know, there's a lot of chopping. There's a lot of like, oh, it's a demo, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm writing it and I'm doing the final part of the demo. I'm like, you know, it would be great if from this part to this part, I did this, and I'll just record that part and I'll slip it in. If I need to replace more, I will replace more. But generally in the demo process, I will focus on working quickly in terms of the technical process. Slow, I would be more mindful about the writing and the composition and the arrangement. And in the demo process, I'm all about that. I don't really care about really killer production or really great playing. It just has to be good enough. And I will record very small parts because I will have an idea and I'll be like, oh, that part, I need it in there. I need a shot here instead of it to play all the way through, etc. And then we'll move to the final project here, final recording, and all of the takes are a lot longer, you know? And it's, some of these are pretty short. But the bass is very long. You know, I do things in like the primary blocks. One of the advantages of doing longer takes is it has more swagger to it. If you're trying to do tech metal and be super tight, maybe you want to do shorter takes. But if you want it to have feel, if you want to try and achieve this more band-like feel, do longer takes. Still try and get good takes. Don't try and play terrible. But there is a swagger to longer takes that you don't get in the minuscule takes that a lot of this tech metal kind of stuff does, or a lot of this modern gent. They'll do like literally a second at a time, a couple seconds at a time, and which is fine. That's cool. Some people can actually play it. A lot of people can't, and that's fine. It's making music. There's no rules. If you're playing it live, maybe you want to be able to play it. I don't know. But I'm going to go back to my notes here. Let's see. Notes. Bam. Let's try and stay in the frame, Scott. And I'm going to jump over to the comments in a moment here. Wetlands production. Great. So, yeah, the approach is like working on a tape machine. All tunes, all the songs are in one timeline. I use a new track if you need a different sound, you know. I don't do any different sounds on the same track. One track for each sound. Even if there's a volume change, new track. Longer takes, slightly looser. And I commit to the sound at capture. What I'm talking here is I use the Line 6 HELIX and the hardware modeler. I also have the plugin, and I use the plugin here at home when I'm practicing. And I usually have the actual hardware. It stays at the studio. But one of the reasons that I use the hardware modeler is because it spits out the sound. I could record a DI as well, but I don't care about that. I just want the performance. And the fades follow the audio file. If you're doing DIs, the DI volume, if you put a fade on it, you'll notice if you're doing a DI and it's playing through an amp sim, a plugin, the fade will interact with the amp as opposed to if the fade is on an actual audio file from a final audio file from the Helix, you'll get the fade. Am I on the camera? I'm not on the camera. I'm sure I'm not. So what's next here? Structure, drums to tracks. We talked about that. Reinforcing, mono, guitar. Oh yeah, we should probably talk about that. I'm going to just jump over to the comments real quick because I have no idea what's going on. I don't even know if anybody's watching. Like I say, today is a test. We're testing. So I hope some of that is, insightful. I hope you're able to follow along to some extent. I hope some of this is like, interesting or of some kind of value to your own musical life, your own production ideas. It's the whole point of it. I'm not trying to tell you this is how you should do it. These are ideas. I'm sharing my ideas, and maybe some of them are useful because I know there are a lot of people who would like to do more and are fearful to do more or self-conscious about it, or I should go to camera here, or they have some reason why they can't do it, or they don't feel that their production is up to snuff. I'm like, you can get there. Obviously, the more you do, the further you'll get. So you won't get there if you don't do it. The easiest way to get to where you want to go is to do the thing. That's just the reality of it. Wishing or hoping or being fearful doesn't help you. I know, because I was all those things. I used to wish and I used to be fearful and in all kinds of things, not just this stuff. So my hope in doing this is that it's helpful in those ways. I'm going to just go to the comments real quick because I don't know who's here. Oh, okay, great. I got a couple viewers. Aiden saying, what up, I've been looking for. Okay, everything sounds good. DeVille Studios, awesome. Sick art on the walls. Oh, shoot, on the walls here. Right. Yeah, my partner, Carrie, she's a abstract painter, and she's great. The house is really stacked with paintings because she just keeps painting, and she sells enough of them, but yeah, she paints so much that eventually this floor will probably be full of paintings. Aiden says, swagger is a good descriptor, especially on the final version of Think Tank. Oh, great. Cool. That is the goal. And it's the goal in everything I do, and it's hard to hit. I find it hard to hit, but it is the thing that kind of makes it feel and sound more realistic. And DeBeauville Studio says, would these tones translate to drop C guitars or strictly made for baritones? So the tones for this project are an E1 standard, bass E. It's a bass 6 and a bass. They're both in the same octave. And the tones, I made the tones for that, but I've used the tones for other things, and it sounds good. And I think my rule for that is, for tones in general, is just try tones. And if you like them, those are the ones that you use. And if you don't like them, don't use them. If you don't have any choice for some reason, then I guess, I don't know, weather the storm. And also, dude, you're doing great. Reminds me of when Devin Townsend streams. When we were in lockdown, that dude was figuring out the live stream on the fly and pulled it off. Awesome. I don't think I'll ever be as good as Devin. Or maybe I will. Maybe I will crush Devin. But yeah, Devin's great. And then that's the Carnival kit. The the progressive kit is the Carnival kit. Yeah. That's right. I remember, I think that's like why I initially bought it, because the Carnival sample, I was just like, oh, I love this vibe. And I've never been able to actually use it for anything. It never really fit, but it's always been really good as a reinforcement kit. in all of my mixes, it's usually the one that I go for. Following along, you're killing it for going on the fly. Well, I do have an outline, Aiden. I have an outline for this, and it's still, I need a second screen to do it properly so that I can more quickly go from one thing to the next and manage it better. But anyways, we're going to move along to the production. Let's take a look at the notes. Production. Next thing, mono guitars. Right. So we're going to talk about the structure of the mix a little bit more. Excuse me. Desktop. Bam. And let's do that. Bam. So we're going to go back to the mixer. Bam. Which is Command M. I think that's Control M on Windows. Not sure. I haven't done music. I use Windows machines quite a bit, but I haven't used a Windows machine for music production in like quite a few years. So the last time I used it was for a demo video showing, you can do stuff on these really old PCs. A lot of people are kind of holding themselves back from getting into recording, but you can do quite a bit with even a very old junky machine. I used a very old junky PC, and it worked fine. I made a great track out of it, or a great sample. Like it was good enough. But we're going to be talking a little bit more about the structure of the production and structure of the mix. Particularly, we'll start with the drums. So this is the primary kit here. I'm just going to double check OBS. Yeah, we're good. Bam, bam. So let's go back there. Great. So this highlighted area here is all of the return channels of the main drum kit. And these drums, each individual drum dumps into this drum over here, this fader over here, and it's a drum group. So if I play it, let's play a little loop of this section here. Great. Right? So that is like a group fader for the drums, but it's not really a group fader, it's a group master. So all of the drums dump into that fader, the actual audio goes into that fader, and then that fader feeds the master. And there's a couple reasons why I do this. Number one, it allows me to kind of like mix the drums how I like, and then take that mix of the drums and place it in the mix of the guitars and bass with one fader without disrupting the mix. So that's number one. So there's a huge benefit to this. There is a means by which to set this up that is very easy. If you think that DAW setup videos in like this, like live streams for only the groups, for only the members, if you think that like setting things up type videos are of value to you, let me know. I'd be happy to make those. They would be pretty easy to make, and they would be kind of fun. It's never something I would make for my main channel, any of the main channels, but in the back end, it would be great. It'd be fun. Anyway, so setting up a drum group, a group master for the drums to dump into has advantages that way. Secondly, you can put plugins on it. You're not going to see this plugin pop up, but you will see me, hovering over it in the rack. I'll solve that problem another day. But this fader, we can put plugins on it. We can put effects on it. So I have right now a saturator on it, the Klanghelm saturator. It's a great saturator, and it's free. I can't even believe it. It's great. And so yeah, the group master, the master fader for the drum, setting up a group master fader for the drums allows you to control your mix of the drums in relationship to the other instruments, the overall, like just take your mix that you have. I like all of the kick and the toms and all these, I like their placement in relationship to each other, but I want the whole kit a little bit louder or the whole kit a little bit quieter. That fader allows you to do it really easily. And then you can put effects on it. So tape saturation, these sorts of things to give your mixes a little bit more vibe. Very easy rather than putting it on every channel. You could compress it. You could do all kinds of things. So that's one thing about the structure of this production, the structure of this mix. This relates more to the mix, but very useful. And then the reinforcing kit is on its own channel over here. And once again, it has its own effects and all that kind of stuff. Just going quickly, I'm not going to get too into the technicalities of the mix, but the snare has is sent out to a reverb. It's a parallel effect send. So this here is the reverb for the snares, the snare top and bottom. And the snare top is also going to a sub. Where is it? Right here, a sub. And I'm pitching that down to give me a little bit of a fatter sound. And that's coming up behind the main snare. So I'm using a send right here. You probably can't see that window, but this here, a little send, and it's sending over to this channel here. And I have a sub on that. Like I say, I don't know how to set it up that I can just see every plugin just by clicking on it. I have to set it up a different way. Anyway, you get the idea. But I have two parallel effect sends for this drum mix, and that is reverb and some subs. And the only thing going to the subs, and it's just pitching this, it's not really a sub, it's just pitching the snare down a little bit so it's fatter. And that's being mixed up behind the main snare. This is what it sounds like. Let's right? It's very, very quiet. Let's do this. Don't really play that snare much, hey? Great. So, and this, I'll mute it. Ooh. I don't know if you can notice that, but the snare is a bit fatter with that sub in there. I find quite a bit fatter. But yeah, it's up to you. And then the reverb, we can solo the reverb as well. So a little bit of, what do you call it? A little bit of toms and a little bit of kick also go to the reverb. A very, very small amount compared to the snare. The snare is the loudest thing going into the reverb, and it is a parallel effect send. We can get into that another day. I would have to set things up better in order to show you how that works. But that's the drums, and I'll very quickly get into the rest of the structure of this mix. So this is 2 bass tracks. There's only 1 bass track being used, really. This is an effect bass track, so this is an example of, let's go to Imperial. So Imperial here has an affected bass in the beginning. Right? And this is the other bass. Right? So 2 different bass sounds, 2 different tracks. And the entire session has that second bass track just for that tune, just for that section of the tune. Because it's digital, we can do that. Digital tape. Other thing to think about with this whole session is the time signatures. Each tune has its own time signature. You can set that up really easy in Reaper. Not today's topic. We can get into that another day if for some reason that's interesting to you. But bass. We're talking about bass in the mix, and not in the mix, in the placement, the structure of this production. So there are 2 bass tracks because there are 2 different bass sounds. And there is a third sort of bass track. If we go over here to subs, bam. So this channel, Imperial, right. So I'm going to mute it, or I'm going to solo it rather. So it's subs for the bass guitar. And this track, it's a send from the bass, the main bass channel. You can see it here. It's a send. It's sending over here. And I have an EQ, a cabinet. Oh, there's more than that on there. But there we go. We have an EQ, a limiter, a pitch. So I'm pitching it down an octave. I'm EQing it again. It's going through a cab, a bass cab, an 810 bass cab, another limiter, and an EQ. It's heavily processed. And the reason is because I only want this tiny part of those subs to just enhance the sub qualities of the bass guitar, because the bass and the guitar, both instruments, are in the same octave. So let's just listen to the bass by itself again. So you can hear those subs in there. And if you listen to it with the whole mix, and we'll listen to it again. I'll take the subs out. I think it makes a massive difference. It's up to you to decide if that's of any use to you or not. Wetlands is a gnarly sounding band, so I'm okay if it sounds a little bit. It has a kind of wonkiness to it. I'm okay with it because I want it to sound like a PA that's exploding. But to cap off on the structure of this mix, we have pairs of instruments. So the 2 main guitars, some feedback guitars, and these are also high gain, like the high gain guitars, the Rat guitars. And then we have more Rat guitars here. It depends on what I had to do in each tune. And then we have the mid gain tracks here. And then we have a pair of lead tracks here, and then the subs, and then these are for feedback and such things. And the lo-fi drums. Oh yeah, the lo-fi drums. It's a little effect way down here. Where are you, lo-fi drums? Bam. Great. So, lo-fi drums. Let's just take a listen to that. Right? And let's listen how it comes in. So there you go. Lo-fi drums. And I'm just using an amp sound, like a amp distortion, and a EQ to make it sound that way. Great. And I recorded an audio file of the actual MIDI that is at the beginning here to create that. right? It's just that fill looped. So that's the structure of this mix, of this production. And so I hope there's some stuff in there that I'm going to just check my OBS. Oh, it's still on the right thing. So yeah, if I hit number keys, it'll change the view. Good to know. The structure, that is the structure of this particular production. I will use a similar philosophy for every production that I do. It's one of the things that makes my stuff sound the way that it does. And some people, the reason I'm sharing it is because it's not very popular in a bunch of different ways, this way of working. There's a bunch of reasons why it's not very well known to work this way. And yeah, it's a little bit of a mystery to some folks. And I'm like, it's really easy. And there's a bunch of things that it makes it a more fluid, simpler production. And I would argue it's one of the things that gets it to sound a little bit more like a real band. If that's important to you. If you want that robo sound, then go for that robo sound. But if you're going for something a little bit more band-like, some of these things help. So what else? I'm going to change my camera here. We're going to shut down pretty soon. Hello, full camera. And I'm just going to take a look at my notes without putting them on screen to see where we're at. Structure, mix globe. Right. So a couple things. Some things that I think are not very popular, like that I'm doing that are not very popular that might be of interest to you would be keeping it minimal. Like, yeah, I'll use a new track every time for a new sound, but in a way that is making it minimal because there's less, if any, automation or anything like that. What camera am I at here? Oh, mix into faders. We're going to talk about that. So yeah, I keep it really minimal. Another thing that I do that I've come to realize a lot of people don't know about. I just assumed everybody knew about this. So if you do know about this, I apologize for wasting your time. But I know for a fact there are a lot of people who don't know about this. So we're going to solo the drums here. Just the main kit, including the group. And something that I've noticed, so we're going to just use this group fader here, this main fader over here, as sort of like treat it as a master fader. Oh, wait, are we in the mix? Let me double check here. We're not in the mix. Desktop, bam. So yeah, to recap, these faders, this is all the drums, and they're going into this group master. We're going to think about the group master as a master fader. So I mix into the fader. So I mix into this fader, I mix into the master fader, but like always mix into your target fader. Like the value of your kick drum, let's just like take this all down here to 0. And so when you're mixing, right? I chose the worst place for an example. Great. So you're mixing your kick drum. You're starting with your kick drum. Where are you going to place it in the mix? It doesn't matter what the value of the meter is on this fader. You want to think about your target fader. So using this fader or even the master fader as an example, for me, because I mix drums into a group fader and then the group fader dictates all, I'll mix it into the group fader. But my group fader is set to, in this case, it's not set to 0. I don't want to get too confusing here. There we go. We'll say it's 0. I can undo it all. So the kick drum, we're going to mix it into this fader. We don't care where it is here as long as it's not peaking. And so my target here is -18. I always mix the kit to be peaking, average peak at -18. And right now it's doing that. Great, so it's a good setting. And then I'll mix the snare to also be -18. Average peak, not RMS. And it's a good idea to separate them out when you're doing this so that the gain of one channel isn't influencing the meter and all that kind of stuff. And it looks like we have -18 there. So from there, I'll mix the rest of the kit in according to taste. But the kick and the snare are going to be max peak or peak average -18. And based on this fader, not based on these faders. Don't care what these faders are doing as long as they're not peaking or distorting. That's important. But this fader is how I actually set the volume. And you'll find this, quite a few people do this. And I've realized a lot of people do not do this. They never do this, and they never knew about it and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, ooh, it's a good thing to know. I went to school for this. I used to work in big studios back when there used to be tape and all that kind of stuff. And that was just the way that people did it. But people learn now just on their own on a computer. So there's a lot of good reasons why people might not know this. So I hope that one is useful, insightful. Let's undo all that. How many moves did I make there? There we go. Bam. Great. Not that it matters. I'm never going to use this mix again. It's not like I'm going to remix my record. But I hope that's insightful. I'm just going to take a quick look at my notes one more time. Production. Bam. Guitars and pairs. Got that. Pair of tracks for... Yeah, got that. Oh, yeah. The last thing, I think we can kind of two things. We'll get into more in the future. Last two things. So, big one is minimal plugins. If you notice here, like I say, on my screen, the way it's set up, I can't just open the plugins and show you. I have to set the screen recorder up a different way. But you can just see, you know, everything that's dark is where there's plugins. There's very minimal plugins on this mix. But on certain things, there's a lot. You know, the bass guitar, there's a lot. The bass subs return, there's a lot. And this reverb has a lot as well. But other than that, there's not a lot of plugins, and on a lot of channels, there's no plugins. On the guitars, there's just a very, very minimal EQ. I can't, you know, it's going to be a hassle to share what this looks like, so I'm not going to share the EQ today. We can get into that stuff in the future. But yeah, minimal plugins is going to get you closer to minimal processing. It's going to get you closer to that real band sound. That's important to me. And if that's something you're looking for, corrective EQs and control-oriented tools, compressors and limiters and EQs to control your mix is why you might reach for them. But I don't, like, the sounds that I get are the sounds that I get, and I don't really do too much to process sounds because that can make things sound very plasticky and very computer. A lot of this computer music that you listen to these days, that people listen to these days, is very processed. And then when you go see the band live, you're like, huh? Like this band doesn't sound like anything like they did on Bandcamp or on Spotify or whatever. I don't get it. Well, it's because it's so processed that it's very difficult to recreate. And people don't even play. Like they barely play anything in the recording so that when they play the show, they miss a lot. I'm being a funny guy. There are a lot of people who are really good. But are we in there? Yeah, we're showing the mix. Okay, so minimal, something that I do. And the reason I'm sharing that is like, you don't have to process things if you don't want to. Get a good sound, get a sound that is relative to the sound that you're going for. That's the demo. So, yeah, sounds good enough. Sounds like kind of like a band. Long takes and minimal kind of plugins, minimal processing. And the very last thing, just quickly taking a look at my notes. Oh yeah, that one's kind of important. This is the very last thing that we're going to talk about is the bass guitar itself. And I can't, like I say, can't really show the plugins today because it's not set up and I'd have to go into OPS and set it for every single one. That's not a solution. But you can see in the rack here, so this is the bass channel. In the rack we have a 1176 style compressor or a compressor limiter, a compressor, or actually a compressor limiter, a limiter, a master limiter, and an EQ. And the goal for me with bass guitar is to really control the dynamic range so that it's pretty sausage-like. So it's not, the guitar itself can be a lot more dynamic, a lot more lifelike. Even the drums can be a lot more lifelike, but I find the bass guitar for all the music that I make needs to be even, very solid. And that gives that solid sound. And I do this sort of thing live as well. The gain, using a bunch of gain on the bass helps. Using gain on bass, there's a bunch of things. If you do apply a lot of gain to bass, there's a bunch of things to kind of consider in doing that. I'm not going to get into that. We could do a whole episode on that. But yeah, just a very controlled dynamic range on the bass, very even. The tone going in is pretty even, but you can see it has some ups and downs here. And these plugins seek to limit that further, make it a lot more sausage-like, and that allows it to fit into the mix really well and just give a solid feel, a solid tone for the drums and the guitars to kind of have this relationship based on the bass. The bass is the thing that is in between everything. So that's the last thing. That's very important to my mixes, to my productions, to playing live, all of that. So I hope that was good. I'm going to jump over to the, to the comments and kind of just see who's here and maybe sign off. And the man has a script. So Aiden's saying, your note that said avoiding canned sound in regarding to drums, to tracks, is that a reference to the drum track plugins being able to interact with everything else in the DAW more cohesively? Yeah, so you can place the drums. I'm going to switch to camera view here. You can place the drums in the mix in a more realistic way, I find the mixer in the actual sampler and the effects in the sampler are very plastic sounding. So that is my reasoning for drums to tracks. And also I'm mixing everything in one mixer. I'm not using these cascading mixers so that one mix has to relate to another mix, etc. To some extent, that is happening with the master group fader, but it's in the same session. Everything is relevant, immediately relative to one another, and I have control over how breathy, how open things are. And I'm getting the maximum audio from the drum samples into the mixer, into the main session. So that's the whole idea there. I can't actually get the sounds that I like doing it from mixing the drums from the actual drum mixer, like the sampler mixer. I've never been able to. Right from the beginning, I started doing drums to tracks and it was immediately a solve for me. I'm not sure if it would be the same thing for other people. That said, I never used canned drums before. I always tracked real drums and mixed things on mixers, big SSLs, Studer tape machines and SSL consoles, or AMEC consoles, Neve consoles, whatever console was in the studio, didn't really matter. But yeah, it allows you to kind of just like totally control your mix right in front of you. You're not going into other windows to control the mix levels or volumes. And yeah, it's a little bit more open. So that's what's going on there. And DeBeauville Studio says the man has a script. Yeah, I have a script. It's like an outline. I need to have an outline, otherwise I'll get way off. I'm a tone hunter, Bunn. Bass in particular causes the most grief while I record. A bass tone breakdown would be awesome. I would be happy to do that. I love bass guitar. I mix everything very bass heavy. I'm a drums and bass heavy guy. Guitars are not as important to me. I know in the world of metal that surrounds us, guitars are a priority for most people in most mixes. They're not for me. The bass guitar is definitely a priority. The drums are a priority. Drums and bass, that relationship and that priority in the mix is very important. But if you like the guitars as a priority, then yeah. But the bass being like really in control is a huge advantage in any mix. Unless you're doing, let's say, acoustic jazz, like an acoustic bass, stand-up bass, in a jazz trio. It should not be compressed. It should, generally jazz isn't compressed at all, but in that kind of jazz, some people will say, oh, well, I actually compressed it a little bit, and they'll do it as a secret, and the band won't know. I've been on many sessions where they're like, oh yeah, I compressed the bass. I compressed this. Don't let them know. They don't want it compressed, but it actually sounds better. I'm like, I agree. So, but generally speaking, in jazz and classical music, traditional jazz and classical music, you won't see a lot of compression. You won't see a lot of EQ. Things will be pretty natural. Excuse me. But in a lot of like rock and pop music, the bass is extremely controlled. And I would argue that it has a huge part in being able to control your whole mix. The bass guitar or bass, if it's a synth bass, then, same. It's a very important sort of piece of the puzzle. Bam, group fader for drums. Okay, cool. So that's all the comments. I wanted to put an example, like share this session in the actual communities, like particularly the Patreon and the YouTube memberships, pages. I would have to prepare it differently though. So I'm going to see if I can prepare this so that it's all audio and you don't need any plugins. Also so that the plugins would be helpful though. I don't know. I'm not sure how to share this session in a way that would be beneficial, like helpful to other people. If other people can chime in on that, either like you can just leave a comment in the Patreon or the Discord or the, what do you call it? The YouTube memberships. These are all private streams. So none of these are public, general public. So leave any kind of comments or questions or feedback that you might have. It's totally cool. This is an open conversation. And it seeks to be helpful. I'm not trying to show off or, I don't know, promote myself or whatever. It's just like, this is what I'm doing, and certain aspects of what I might be doing might be helpful to others. So that's all I care about. What do we got here? Bam. Great. I'm not sure how to share this session in a meaningful way. Let me know. So I'm going to sign off. Let's go to the comments here. And would love some feedback for those of you who happen to maybe watch the replay or whatever. Let me know what's good and all that and what was bad. And hopefully we'll do some more of them and they'll get better in terms of being able to show everything correctly. I need 2 screens. That's what I need. Need to hustle because screens are expensive. I just bought one. Thankfully, I could send it back. I got it from Best Buy and they have an amazing return policy and it was hassle-free. But I bought it. It was broken. And I was like, what am I going to do? Beauville Studios says rendered stems with BPM for the track sounds great. I can dig in there with an EQ analyzer. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I could do that pretty easily. I might just do one of the tracks to start with and maybe even render the drums to audio, because I'll do maybe 2 versions, one with the MIDI and one with the actual drum audio in case people don't have the drum samplers and all that kind of stuff. So that would be easy enough. And yeah, have a good night, guys. I'm going to sign out here. And that was a little better than I expected. I expected it to be very difficult. Have a good night. And we'll see you in the next one. Oh.